Chapter 24. Harper arrived in San Francisco just after 3 p.m. He stopped at his office. The one he turned over to Michael. The one with his name out front for the world to see. His father's set in large lettering in stone in the front of the building, Samsa. When the valet came out to park the truck, he glanced up in surprise at seeing Harper. "Mr. Samsa, good to see you back. We heard you had gotten married and living out in the wilderness." "Oh, you've heard about my property," Harper said with a raised eyebrow. "Nevada is a great place. Some places remote. I hear they have beautiful lakes for fishing and boating. Yeah, it's all over the office, and the girl I date, she said she got it from a good source, and from the expression on your face it seems to be true." The attendant stepped in the truck, waved, and drove it around and up the ramp into the parking garage. Harper stood looking around, wondering who had passed that piece of information down where it would reach the parking attendants. He hadn't replied to the office gossip, he just smiled and didn't say any more. As he stepped into the building, he could feel his father's presence. The building still bore his father's designs and the furniture his father had ordered before his death. But Harper hadn't taken his time to put his stamp on the building and the many more holdings left to him by his father. Of course he was a Samsa, and there would be more Samsas to come, and he would let them make changes to the company when it came time. At first he thought about selling, but now there wouldn't be a need. All this would belong to his sons. Or his daughters. When he entered the elevator, he felt the eyes on his back, but then he heard all kinds of noises he had never heard before or smells that incited his senses as never before. It had been Emily's smell that drew him to her. The natural fresh smell of a spring morning when the sun is out and frost is on the ground. Like the heavy breathing coming from a large man in the back of the elevator, or the smell of a woman's perfume, or the scent of a couple who had just had sex. He smelled the odor of passion as they passed in front of him, and got off on the 6th floor looking less of a couple, but the signs were clear if anyone could smell and see them the way Harper did. His sharp eyes saw a strand of dark hair down her white blouse, and a long strain of her blonde hair attached to his black hair. He saw the flush of the man's face and the blush in hers as they passed him with their secret smile. The door opened on their floor, and the woman glided out the elevator in one direction, and the man strode in the opposite direction carrying their secret with them. Then Harper heard someone say to the man with the secret, "Your wife called, Andy." Now Harper knew what most men didn't, and it could be a curse or a blessing. The door closed and continued up to the 21st floor where Harper got off. He passed the secretary, who was surprised to see him because he never spent any time in the office since his father had died. He walked past her fast. He strode through the hall, and standing at his office door before the secretary said a word. She didn't have time to welcome him back, which he didn't want anyway. Harper opened the door to his office without knocking, and stopped at the door, closing it behind him. Sitting behind his desk was Michael with a look of scorn on his face. It was for whoever was sitting in the chair facing the desk and her back to Harper. Michael was shuffling papers and tapping wildly on the desk with his pen. When he saw Harper, he looked up. The woman in the chair turned around and smiled. "So you finally came. I told Michael they first wanted to see you yesterday. Oh, if you're looking at my hair, I changed the color. Back to your natural color, of course. Mousy brown," Michael said with intense pleasure. "Oh, Michael, I didn't know you noticed," Elizabeth said in a big voice and a thin smile. "Everyone knew you weren't a real blonde. That is, everyone except Harper. I just didn't have the heart to tell him. But he would have found out if you had let him," Michael said. "That's enough, Michael. And what do you want from me, Elizabeth?" Harper said, his voice low but firm. "Sit down first." She patted on the leather chair across from where Michael sat and near here. Harper surveyed the chair. He didn't relish being that close to her, but what could she do to him? He felt nothing for her. Not like he felt when the relationship was new and his interest was high. And he wanted to fuck her. But now she couldn't ignite a fire under him if she stripped naked and begged to suck his cock. "I have papers I need you to sign," Elizabeth said. Harper took the papers from her and read them, and sat in the chair across from his desk. "Under no circumstances are you to sign those papers, Michael said, peering across at Elizabeth as if he could strangle her. Harper dropped the papers on the desk in front of Elizabeth, and she picked them up and placed them in front of Harper. I don't plan on signing those papers because you know and I know that I'm not the father of your child. I'm having my own children, and I'm not going to give away half my father's company to you or anyone. It's for my sons. Don't be so sure about that. You're O positive, and I'm O positive, and the father of my child is O positive. I name you as the father. Now who do you think they will believe? If you continue with this, I will go to the newspapers and say how you broke our engagement when you discovered I was pregnant and you disowned your child. What do you think will happen then? You can do whatever you like, but I'm not signing those papers. I came here as a courtesy, and now I'm going home and get some rest, and I'm leaving tomorrow to be with my wife. What do you think that little nerd of a wife will think of you when I tell her about us? She might ask for a divorce. Elizabeth's mouth curled up in a sly grin and her eyes lit up. Emily would never divorce me, so do your worse. Elizabeth stood and threw the papers in Harper's face. I warned you, she said. And she strutted out of the office and slammed the door with a loud, thunderous boom. It was so loud it felt as if she had loosened the hinges. Michael and Harper watched at her and shook their heads, then blew out a hard breath through their teeth. She's a piece of work, isn't she? Michael said. I could have someone get rid of her. I never liked her anyway. If I didn't know you, I would take you seriously. Now stop with the nonsense and keep her away from Emily and me. I wouldn't want to get on her bad side. She's a mean one, Michael said. I know, but you aren't, and I am, and I don't want this to go any further. She needs money and is desperate to get it. All I need to do is sign these papers after you make her an offer. Then I can get back to Emily. I will give Elizabeth only what's necessary, but I will not state that I'm the father. If she's pregnant at all. You have to stay a few more days and submit to a DNA test. Then you can clear the matter up quickly. How long will it take for the test to come back? A week or two. Well, you won't need me then, will you? I don't think so. I'm going to my father's mansion to eat and get some sleep. If you need me for anything, just call me, and for heaven's sake get Elizabeth off my back. I know. I wanted to go on record that I warned you about her. Don't start that again. A woman like that can ruin your life forever. She doesn't stop. She comes up with one outrageous scheme after another. I know I said don't pay her off, but I think you made the right decision because she will never give you a moment's rest. As Harper was leaving the Samsa building and Michael was making plans for Elizabeth, Emily had plans for Liam. Chapter 25. Liam, I want you to come with me, Emily said. I need you to drive me to Angela's. She's the shifter I told you about. Harper said it wasn't a good idea, but I said you're a scientist and you would understand. Emily stood in the library doorway, dressed in a pair of stretch pants and a long blue blouse covering her stomach and stopping at her knees. She wore a leather jacket over her shirt as a layer. She stood looking at Liam reading a book from the vast library Harper had shipped in from his father's mansion. I guess you could call me that, but some of the things you're telling me are unbelievable. How do you expect me to accept that some werewolves and cats and animals can shift to different forms? That's why I want to show you. You believe your eyes, don't you? Your eyes can lie to you, Liam said. Harper doesn't want you to know about him and the shifters in Samsaville, but I thought it would be best because you're going to be here when my babies are born. You will see what I've been trying to tell you. He put the book on the shelf in the space where he had gotten it, and stood and walked over to Emily with a broad, warm smile. I'll indulge you only because you're pregnant. And you can't drive. I'll drive you. They walked out to the outside through the kitchen and entered the 6-car garage. Why do you need so much room to park your car? You have only 2 cars? Liam said, looking around and helping Emily into the Range Rover. Turning to her, Liam said, I never had a car until I graduated from college. My parents were poor. But they had me, and I've done all right and took care of them financially. That could be my story. I never drove a car until my friend Stanley offered to teach me, and then I didn't drive much because I couldn't afford anything. I had to take care of my father all my life, and we moved around a lot. I guess we have a lot in common. But they didn't, but Liam wanted to think they did. When you pass through the Samsa gates, turn right and continue down that road until I tell you to turn and pull over, Emily said, turning to Liam. When Emily and Liam reached the Rusty Nail and came to a stop in front of the building, Liam sat up and looked at Emily. You're not going in there. I'm a man, and I don't want to be caught dead in there. Now you sound like my father. I don't need a father, especially as young as you. I know these people. And Emily reached for the handle to open the door, and Liam jumped out and rushed to the passenger side and helped Emily out of the car. It was the lunch crowd, and some of the men who had been hired to build Harper's town had parked their trucks out front. Because there were no hotels, Angela and Nero let them pitch tents near the bar. There were no restaurants for miles, so Angela and Nero had fresh meat and liquor. You could only get the meat rare with a potato. The Rusty Nail was a natural place to stop because they had to eat somewhere. Business had been booming, and because of that, Angela hired some of her shifter friends and relatives. There were more females than males before, and the men or werewolves had their choice of the were females. Now things had changed, and the were females had their choice of men and werewolves. As Liam opened the door, he and Emily strode into the bar. Angela had made the bar more modern with tables and chairs and changed the floors. She even had a new counter installed. One made of granite. When she saw Emily, she rushed to her. How do you like it? Business has improved. I say it has, Emily said. This is my doctor, Liam. He's going to be staying with us for a few months, at least until the babies are born. Angela touched Emily's stomach and then turned to Liam. It's a pleasure. Emily talks about you. I hope you are taking good care of her. I'm trying to. And I heard about you. What are you, some kind of witch? Angela gave Liam a persistent cold look. Liam didn't mean that, Angela. He doesn't understand. Angela warned. Come sit down, Emily. This is the special booth. Just for you and Harper, but since you say the human is your friend, I guess he can stay. And she led them to the booth in the middle of the room. As they passed through, the men acknowledged Emily as Harper's wife. Some raised their caps and gave out a broad smile. After a polite smile, they went back to eating and drinking. A young waitress pranced over to the table and stood before them. She wore a black and white stretch suit with a long tail and a pair of fake ears. She had pale skin and long blonde hair. Her face childlike, her body thin and shapely, but she was an adult. She was an adult shifter. A snow leopard, from what Emily had noticed. Miss Samsa, I've heard about you and your husband. But she had her eyes on Liam. The shifter, a beautiful snow leopard, appeared fascinated with Liam. Her light blonde hair and bright blue eyes caught Liam's attention as well. Would you like something to eat? The waitress said to Liam. Emily watched as the snow leopard purred when she got near Liam. She was the perfect one to get Liam's attention and keep it, Emily thought as she took a long look at her. From what she was observing of Liam, he was taken by her, and more than interested. I will have just a glass of water, Liam said nervously. He didn't know why the young female affected him, but it was clear to Angela and Emily. They just laughed and looked at each other. Liam stood. I'll be back, Emily. And he followed the snow leopard to the bar, and she handed him a glass of water. He stood leaning at the end of the bar and talked to her as he drank his water. I see your friend is interested in my cousin. It appears so. They both glanced at them, and then Angela turned to Emily. Are you okay? You look tired. I feel great. I just wanted to get Liam from under me. He acts like he's my father. And Harper is jealous of him. He doesn't want anyone to be that personal with me. That's because he's so young and he doesn't have a girl. I can tell by the way he reacts to you that he's infatuated with you. Which isn't good. Usually, it's the other way around. A woman falls for her doctor. How do you know these things? Emily questioned. Because my mother was a human. My father a werepanther. Do you want something to eat, Emily? Emily turned away from looking at Liam and turned to Angela after concentrating on what she said. No. Harper hired these cooks, and they are terrific. They cook my food the way I want, and they stock up with everything a pregnant woman needs. She smiled at Angela. I didn't know your mother was human? What are you going to do in this wilderness? It drove my mother insane when I left to be with Nero. I won't have time to think about anything because Liam says I'm having 3 boys. You will have 3 werewolves? Why did you say it like that? Because you will be the only human living with 4 werewolves. And I forgot to tell you. Shifters mature fast. Before you know it, they will be yearlings. What's a yearling? Like a teenager, only worse. They are somewhere between teens and adulthood. It could be trying on any human, especially a mother. I would wander at night, and when the full moon came, Nero was there coaxing me into the woods. Angela had a blush on her cheeks. We finally left together because we couldn't bear to be apart. I'm sure I'll be okay. Angela glanced at her. I hope so. Now where did that little snow leopard go? It's getting busy, and she took off with that doctor of yours. Oh well, they'll show up later. I was like her once when I was in heat. When they looked up, Liam was standing near Angela and Emily. I see you met our new waitress, Angela said with a smirk. Emily, if you don't mind, I have a date. Can I use your truck when I take you home? Sure. I'm ready to go now. And she said goodbye to Angela, and Liam helped Emily out of the bar and into the truck. They reached the Samsa ranch much sooner than Emily had expected. It seemed Liam had a new purpose, and that purpose was focused on the snow leopard. As Emily stepped out of the SUV with Liam's help, she said, Do you know what she is, Liam? All I know is she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I think I'm in love. She's a shifter. So be careful. There you go with that again, Emily. She's a woman to me, and if it makes you happy, I will be careful. When Harper was climbing into his truck to get back to Samsaville, Liam was climbing into bed with the snow leopard.